everyone, welcome to the Kevyn M Show. I am your host, Kevyn M, and today I have the opportunity to sit down with Pastor Donte and Carlos, and we're going to talk a little bit about the God environment. I went to a service which I've been meaning to go to for almost 2 years now, but I actually had the opportunity to go and sit in on the service, and I had an awesome time. So now I'm going to sit down with Pastor Donte, and we're going to chat it up a little bit about our experiences, his experiences, the vision of the ministry, and the work that they do.
I want to ask you just lift up your hands. We lift up our hands and just say that we surrender. There's nothing to do about it, right? But you're just saying, God, I surrender to you. And I want you to close your eyes right where you are. And I want you to ask God to do whatever you need Him to do right now.
I love you guys so much.
Yes.
Welcome to the Kevyn M Show again.
Yes.
It's good to have you guys back on the show.
We couldn't wait to get back.
Couldn't wait to have you guys. You know, I recorded that show, but I lost it, so there's no archive of our show. So I'm glad to have you guys back.
Oh wow.
So let's jump right in. So everyone, this is Pastor Donte and this is Carlos. You guys may know them from the Pastor Donte YouTube channel. You guys do some awesome work.
Oh, thank you so much.
No, thank you. You guys, you guys inspired me. I watched The Cutest Couple Ever, and I was like, oh, I had like my little sniff, my Kleenex and everything. It was beautiful. So let's jump in it. The God environment. What is the God environment?
Well, the God environment is a place for. It's not like your average church. It's a place for people who feel like they don't fit into normal church or have been rejected because of a belief or a lifestyle or something like this from other churches. And our mission is to create an environment where people who have been rejected from mainstream church can come to, and they can build a relationship with God. But the key thing is we want them to build a relationship with God as they understand Him. Okay. So I always say this, in most churches you go to it, and most churches say, come to us so we can tell you who God is, what you can and can't do. And our church more so says the inverse. We say, come to our church so you can tell us who God has been to you.
Wow. So Carlos, what does the God environment mean to you?
To me, the God environment, it's not a church because Pastor Donte doesn't go up there and preach like one of the preachers you would see on TV. It's more like an environment where people can come in and be themselves, where you meet amazing people and just get connected with other people. And being raised Catholic, I wasn't exposed to this style of church, but while being a part of it, I gained a new love and appreciation for it, and I guess that's it.
So how has the God environment changed your life?
Oh my God. A pastor once told me that the God environment will teach me more about myself than I will ever teach the people about themselves. And that's so true. I've just grown in every different way. We've grown as a couple, I've grown as a leader, as a person, I've grown in my character. So it's really been an environment where personally I've just grown. I think also the type of environment that it is, because it's a place for people who who were rejected from other churches. I think it's allowed me to be more open-minded, to see diversity in all different ways, to see people from different walks of life. Someone said once that we are a cesspool. and not in a bad way, because we don't stink or anything like that. But we are the people that Jesus came for. We are people just like Jesus. We can't forget that Jesus was crucified, and it wasn't because He was popular. It was because He was rejected from the church. So I think that the church has taught me so much about just about who I am as a person.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, after the long extensive time I was not there, I came and I enjoyed myself, and I was welcomed. From the moment I walked in the door, I was welcomed with open arms. There was no judgment, there was no discrimination or hatred. But aside from that, because The God environment is very unconventional. If you're born, whether it's you raised Catholic, whether you're raised Pentecostal, Baptist, God environment is a totally different experience. That's my segue into the message. And the way church is held. It's not, okay, we're going to do praise and worship, then we're going to take up an offering, then we're going to do the announcements, and then this person's going to give me an A and B selection, and then a preacher, then it was totally different. And we got to experience God in a different way because the presence of God was definitely there. But you changed up service. You changed up the way service happens based off of how we're used to having the service.
Yeah,
and the Baptist or Pentecostal.
Right, the way, and we were both raised very similar.
Yes.
We the same church and everything. And I didn't actually do that. They did. Okay. When I started the God environment, I was looking to have some church. You know what I'm saying? We was just going to create a church for people who were rejected like myself. And the first day I went up there and started preaching, people started saying, well, you know what? When I got them preaching, the very first day we were at the Will and Way Center, people started raising their hand. And I thought they were trying to come up and like do the altar thing. And they had questions. So I ended up 15 minutes after the sermon answering questions. And it happened every Sunday. And finally someone said, you know what, Rome, who leads our groups at the church, he said, we need to be doing like a group meeting. I think that would be good. So we started having groups after the service. We cut out a lot of the extra churchy stuff. And now we're at a really unique way of method of having our service. We start off with like a couple songs, like praise and worship. Then after that, we have an introduction of the topic. And normally the topic is just something that's really like this Sunday we talked about, well...
This Sunday we talked about relationships, leaving relationships. When you love somebody, but you know it's time to call it a quits, I guess you could say. And the theme was Pretty Wings, and that's the next thing, like use secular or pop music to preach a message about God. So that was also very interesting to me.
Because you know why? Because I feel like somehow the church is disconnecting from our society. And I mean, what better way to connect with how people are feeling than to actually get the message from, or at least the topic of the message, from the actual people who are going through.
Exactly.
And these songs are not popular because, like some church people say, because the devil is moving or whatever. It's popular because people relate with these messages.
Exactly.
So we wanted to make sure, I mean, the gospel is still there, the good message is still there or whatever, but the focus is more so relative.
And I also want to talk a little bit more about what happened after the service, because I think that's where the real salvation happens. That's where the real deliverance and mending and healing happens. When we can sit and talk to one another. That's the real fellowship, because I can watch CD Jakes on YouTube or on TV and hear the message, but the application happens after, which what we did, which was amazing. Can you talk a little bit more? You touched on it, but can you talk a little bit more? Actually, Carlos, can you talk a little bit more about the session after service?
I think the session, the group discussions that we have right after service is imperative, because people, when they come into the church, they do get this, they get help from the sermon and praise and worship and all that stuff. But I would think that people need more than that. So then that's what the group discussion is for them to express themselves and express whatever problems or issues they're going through. And we've seen that a lot of people have gotten help from these group discussions, and that's why we've kept on doing them, because they're really great.
And this is why we also put the stories in the sermon, the service now. So, you know, we do little songs, and then we have some, you know, different members from the congregation get up and actually tell a story. They're not preaching, they're not even testifying in a sense, even though it's kind of a testimony. They basically just tell a story of an event that they've been through. And so many people have said that, you know, they learn so much from just hearing someone's story.
Well, I'm going to get a little preachy now. The Bible tells us that we overcome by the blood of the Lamb and by the word of our testimony. And a lot of times we don't get that in conventional church or traditional church. We don't get that. We get the opportunity to hear, for the church that still do devotion and testimony, we have those testimonies. But when we get that fellowship, and for me personally, the fellowship was so important to me. Because that's how we overcome. Because I can say, oh, I'm going through this, keep me in prayer. Everybody knows what they're praying about, but Pastor Donte has been through that. He can tell me how he got through it. And that's what the group discussions did for me. There was so, and we were talking about ending relationships, or getting past relationships even. Because sometimes, some of us, a lot of us were actually single and enjoying it, but we still hold on to things from that past relationship, or we deal with loneliness. So, and we're just doing it all over again.
I love it. I love it. I love it. You
I
can
love
talk all
it.
day. I just said it's beautiful.
But that's why I personally have to like continuously promote and talk about the God environment. It just came in my head, something that you said earlier about the God environment. Instead of we saying come to us and we're going to tell you who God is, come to us and tell us who God is to you. So let me ask that question to you guys. Who is God to you?
Wow, you want to start?
Sorry.
It's very interesting because the more I pastor people, and you're good. You're good. You're good. God is so big, and it's hard for me to box him in a box. Now, I came out of a denomination where we were told who God is. That is, who his character was, what he likes, what he dislikes. Even in some ways, you can kind of picture what he looks like through just history of art. But the more I develop my personal relationship with God, he just surprises me to be bigger. And the way I like to describe God is like where Moses in the Old Testament, he had met this God and he said, well, who should I call you? You know, when I go to talk to Pharaoh, who should I say is sending me?
Yeah.
And God said, you know this, I am that I am. In other words, I'm whatever you need me to be at the time that you need me. I'm so big that you can't contain me. I'm just who I am. So I find it very hard to contain God. But if I had to use some words, I could say that God is love. I could say that the greatest two commandments that Jesus said that we ought to love our neighbor as we love ourselves. But the first is that we ought to love God with our heart, mind, and soul. So I'm very careful on putting parameters or limitations of when I describe God. I tend to use very general words referring to love and things of that nature. I do come from a Christian background, and I do hold that faith of Jesus coming and God embodied through Christ. But I don't limit myself to certain doctrines that would say that Christianity is the exclusive way to God. And I want to say that right here on the camera, that I don't believe that if you're Buddhist or Muslim or Jewish that you're missing heaven or you're missing a relationship with God. I think that, again, that's why we say come to the God environment and tell us what your experience has been with God, because who am I as a human being to say that my experience is more legitimate than your experience? So if I was to sum it up, God is, through my experience, whatever I need him to be and whoever I've discovered him to be. Yeah, I know it sounds pretty general, but it's so awesome. Yeah. It's what you need.
Right.
So, Carlos?
Yeah. And my interpretation of God is actually very similar. I don't believe that God is, that there's only like one sole God. I think that God is huge enough where any religion, whether it be Islam, Judaism, Buddhism, any religion, I think God is huge and big enough where anyone from whatever religion can interpret him in however way that they interpret him. For me, though, I was raised with specific ideas of what God is, but mine is really simple. I just see God as this really big being, and who is just love. He's all about love, and sort of like a father, like a huge father.
Or mother.
I'm not going to exclude that. Father or mother or whatever that person is, whatever God is to that person. But that's who God is to me.
So, either of you can jump in on this one, but how do you connect that based off of what we were taught growing up? Because, those are the values and the morals that we hold on to. How do you take, God is this characteristic, God is this ideology, God is this, and now I take it from that and I go to God is love, and this is I accept God for who he is to me now. How did you get there?
The Bible says that no one can come to God unless he first draw him. And we have a concept of what that means, but I've come to find out that it's through our experience with God. When we look at the Bible, it's nothing but a collection of writings of men who had experienced God, and they shared their experience. And I think that although we were taught a certain thing about God, and a lot of us have come to conclusions based off what we were taught, it comes down to that personal experience. And many of us who were rejected from church on some level, or some people weren't even rejected from church, they just necessarily have a belief that doesn't fit within the church or certain doctrines. I think that these people can attest to having an experience that was bigger than what is described. And most of the times when you talk to people in some doctrines that have a clear idea of what God is, they know everything there is to know about God, and they know from the front to the back who he is, can tell you where he lives and everything. These people, he's addressing everything. these people oftentimes find themselves stuck because you have to answer questions that they can't answer. Like, I don't claim to know all things about God, so therefore I'm not stuck in trying to explain to people why do bad things happen to good people, or where did evil come from. All these questions, I mean, there are a lot of loopholes in these ideas. So I think, and normally with a church person to say as well, God is too big, we can't understand him, when they don't really know how to explain the whole totality of things. So I think it just really comes through experience. That's how you really know who God is. You know, it's so funny because, no, I know what he's saying.
What I do want to say, though, is that Donte's helped me a lot with my belief in God, because there was a time when I was sort of feeling iffy about God, because, you know, when you're in school, you start being introduced to the whole theory of evolution and all that stuff. And then there was a time when I started believing in that and started questioning, well, where are the dinosaurs in the Bible and all that stuff, and, you know, just any historical thing like it's missing in the Bible. But then Donte has taught me so much about the Bible and about God, and which has led to my new interpretation of what God is. And I'm not going to let other people tell me who God is, because I guess Donte was saying earlier that every person has their own interpretation of God.
My question is, when it comes down to salvation, we're taught certain things from salvation. You come to Jesus and he saves us, and, you know, for God to love the world, he gave his only begotten Son. You know, we still hold on to a lot of like Christian values. You've heard those, some of the Catholic values, things that you've been taught growing up. And we already established that God isn't this box. God isn't this specific doctrine. He isn't this specific religion. How do you connect the two, salvation as we know it, and the God that we've come to know?
Right. I was just talking to Carlos about this yesterday. I'm so glad you brought this up. And that is true deliverance. A lot of people look for a doctrine, or what doctrine is an organized belief system. It's the art of taking certain scriptures out of the Bible, organizing it to have a belief. And a lot of people look towards those beliefs to deliver them, say from whatever they're going through. Some people, you know. However, what I've discovered is that if you really want deliverance, don't just study a doctrine, study the history and how that doctrine came to pass. I've heard a lot of people say this in the African American Reformation movement about how it was understanding our history that liberated us to know what the truth was. Because a lot of us are under ideologies that stem from historical discoveries that if we knew about this, we wouldn't actually accept those things. And so, before I even answer your question, I have to say that the reason why I'm able to stand here today and conclude what I'm concluding is because I do my research and I understand how things come about, and therefore, you know, it helps me to say, oh, okay, now I can understand what God is saying to me. So now, talking about salvation, let me make sure you're asking the question. You're saying to us, how do you reconcile that old idea that, you know, hell, fire, and brimstone, and you have to be saved through confessing Jesus Christ as your Lord? Okay, very good. Well, I would say this: I don't have a heaven or hell to put people in, and I'm very careful on judging whether someone is going to hell or not. Now, I happen to believe that an all-loving, all-knowing, all-powerful God would not send anyone to hell. And people say, oh, no, people don't get sent to hell, they choose to go to hell. But if God is all-powerful, and if he's all-knowing, it means that the worst person that we can consider possible, right? And we probably don't know the worst person personally, but the worst person we could consider, scenario-wise, God knew before that person was even born that they were going to end up what they were. And if he's all-powerful, he could have, on some level, influenced that person. So there's just so many ways to look at it, and I have a hard time accepting that God, an all-loving and all-caring God, would throw any of his children away. So with that said, I don't believe in a God that we need to save us from ourselves. I personally have not met a God myself who needs to save me from being me, or save anyone from being who they are. So when we talk about sin and sin nature, I like to describe sin as one's non-virtues, or the way I see sin as, I see sin as an awareness, right? The awareness to do against what our God-created purpose was. But I don't see like a need to go out there and tell people, unless you believe in this and this and this, you're going to hell. Because here's the real issue: if this is the if that is the case, if I am as a pastor ordained to go out there and save people from hell, we have a real issue. Because there are so many doctrines that say that you get saved so many different ways that it's just so confusing. I mean, who's really going to hell and who's not? So I would say personally that I find it hard to accept the fact that God throws any of his children.
That's awesome. I'm glad I asked that question because I was not going to record it, but I'm glad that I did. All right, I want to rewind and go back. So we're at the God environment. How does, is it like a membership thing? People can come and actually join and be a part of your movement?
Yeah, actually, what you do is you come down to the church, or we're going to start doing something online too, where we can start broadcasting online. You can join online too. So we don't have members; we have environment leaders.
Awesome. And
the reason why we call them environment leaders is because people tend to think membership, and sometimes we think, okay, well, I'm here to be served. And environment leaders suggest that you're there to engage and lead your environment. And of course, environment, not just meaning the ecosystem, but the people, places, and things that are next to you and near you. That's your environment. So your work, your school, your friends, relationships, whatever, you're there to lead them. And we ask people to come to our church and do so. But yeah, they can come to the church, and it's not like a formal come down to the altar, raise your hand and say you want to join. In our group meetings, we normally offer then, or you can just come to the table. We have a table in the church, and you can just sign up to join. Yeah.
And what would be the goal for your environment leaders? Self-development, building people. What would you see to be a goal?
I think the first goal is to really develop a relationship with God, to really grow in that relationship, because a lot of us have negativity surrounding us, and that negativity causes us to go through depression, anxiety, confusion, and so forth and so forth. And I think that when we learn to embrace who God is and who God has made us, then we become free from that. So the purpose of the church is really to set people free from the bondage of sin, if you will, or negativity, and to develop a relationship with Christ. And I think the second purpose is that we train people how to love others and how to show love, not just with mouth, but through deed. To really get out there and minister. We say environment leader also because we want everyone who comes to our church to get involved, be in a ministry, be in some type of outreach. Whether you're helping kids or helping the elderly, whatever it may be. So that's the purpose mainly for coming.
Thank you. All right, so we're gonna wrap this up, but thanks again to Donte and Carlos for sitting down with me and having this awesome conversation.
Wow, thank you for having
us. It's been amazing. It really has, and it's like every time we get together, you guys touch me, and I thank God for you guys so much. So.
Wow, and I want to say this too. And this is exclusively for your show.
Okay.
Because this is some behind the scenes stuff. Right now, our church is still developing. So we're looking for ideas. We're open for people to come in and share what they see the future of spirituality and church is about. And like I said, for the very first couple months of the church, it was a tension. Behind closed doors, there was tension because I wanted the church to go this way, and it was like the natural progression of the church was going this way because we weren't attracting churchy people.
Yeah.
If I was attracting churchy people, then we would be cool. We'd be having church. But these people that were coming in, they didn't want to so much hear a 40-minute sermon. They wanted to discuss. They wanted topics to talk about. And they wanted to hear stories. And they wanted to hear information that was more relevant, stuff that's more contemporary. So I think that if you are, and if I could talk to the camera real quick, if you're watching this and you're in the Philadelphia, Jersey, Delaware area, or maybe you're online, if you're looking for an environment where you can come to and really express your relationship with God, I think the God environment is really where you need to come. Because I often say that this environment is big enough for us all to fit in. So you're welcome to come.
I endorse that message. So thank you again, and stay tuned for another great episode of the Kevyn M Show. If you are in the Philadelphia area, where can you come to?
Yeah, if you're in the Philadelphia area, you can meet us at the William Wade Center. That's just look up online, williamwade.com or .org rather. We're right on 13th and Spruce Street. Feel welcome to come.
Actually, I think it's waygay.com or .org. I'm not sure.
Waygay?
Okay, Waygay. Actually, it is that.
Let's talk about that because you have a lot of people that come to the God environment who are LGBT. Is it exclusive to? LGBT? Is it?
No, it's not exclusive to the LGBT community, but what has happened is we haven't done much outreach in our community yet as far as going out, letting people know we exist. So it's kind of a deal where people invite their friends. The small group that we started off with happened to be like mostly LGBT people. So they just invite who they naturally hang out with.
Okay.
But we have a plan to go out and really, because the message, and you were there, it really applies to anyone. I mean,
Exactly.
if you're overcoming a breakup, it doesn't matter who you're breaking up from. The principles are all the same. So we do want to get the message out to a diverse group of people.
All right.